All right, welcome back, everybody. That first test run got canceled somehow. I got a text from my mom, who was upstairs being the the test audience, and I said, "Send me a text if you can't hear me or if the sound sounds bad." And I just got a text saying, "All I see is no action, just a picture of a meadow with purple flowers." So yeah, somehow went to screensaver because yeah, that got canceled. Anyways, yes, we're just doing a test run here. I'm picking just a a lesson that I made a while back about just introducing Mandarin to people in a really fun, quick, and easy way. Um, this is just an excuse to try out my new Bluetooth page turner that I have paired with my iPad, which I now have effectively streaming into OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, which is what I'm using to live stream here. It's super fun. Let me know if you want any hints on how to use OBS. It's incredibly powerful. I feel like it's like the new Gutenberg press because with a press of a button, I am now streaming to anywhere in the world that wants to watch. So, without any further ado, I'm just going to test run my new Bluetooth page turner and talk about Mandarin, which I love. It's super fun. It's something I wish I would have started a long time ago, back when I was in first grade and I was checking out Time Life books in the library when the teacher would let me go down there by myself because I got done with all of my other work. And I would pull out Time Life books from Japan and Korea and Chinese and just sit there and draw the characters without knowing anything about what they meant. Oh, and I just wish somebody would have seen that and been like, "Oh, you're interested in that, huh? And here," which is kind of like how I teach. I'm always on the lookout for any little random thread of interest, and then just like, just learn, and sometimes it's just a passing fancy, but sometimes it changes the course of a person's life. And well, as it were, I didn't start learning Mandarin until about, I don't know, going on 10 years now, but it's pretty fun. Wish I had started earlier, but it is what it is, which there's probably a Chinese proverb to that effect, like all good things in all good time. Anyways, all good things in all good time. Let's get started. Okay, so oh yay, my foot pedal works. All right, so like I said, learning Mandarin is actually super fun. It's a challenge, but it's a fun challenge, and it's not as hard as people say. At least it's not in the way that you would think of a language being hard. There's no tables, zero tables. We'll put it that way. We'll probably get to that later. But let's talk about what is tricky. Number one, let's talk about what's tricky and what's awesome. I haven't seen this slideshow in a long time anyways, so it's kind of like a little Easter egg, no pun intended, for me to see what's actually in this. So yeah, let's talk about what's tricky and what's awesome. Now, the Mandarin characters, of course, that is what's tricky. You see this thing, and you don't pronounce this, you don't sound this character out. It's not a phonetic symbol. It's a symbolic symbol. It's a conceptual symbol. So you just kind of have to know how to say it. And so, first thing you got to know is that every character is going to be in proportion of a square, if you're drawing it right. So, and there are simpler symbols that squish together to make the more complicated symbols. So this one on the left means grain, and then this one on the right means, the second one there means mouth. So you can see how the two to the left there on their own fit inside a 1 by 1 square. But to get them in together, you got to squish them into their kind of combined forms. You can see how they still kind of look like the original forms. But now the two of them are squished together and to mean a different concept. So, like, the one on the left is grain, the second one is mouth, but combined together, that's the word huh. which means peace, because historically, a population that has grain in their mouths is a more peaceful population, all other things considered. So yeah, keep your people fed, and the emperor doesn't have to worry about as many revolts as he otherwise would have. So that's how a simple concept plus a simple concept gets squished together to be a slightly more complex concept, and then those can get squeezed together. So it just builds up from there. They can get increasingly more elaborate, but they're all based on these original little things called radicals. And there's 214 radicals. Some of them are still in usage on their own, but most of them I don't think are, most of them aren't. Most of them were used singularly back in the classical Chinese days, but nowadays I think it's pretty rare that you'll just see a radical on its own. Most of these are just recognizable as in their little squished forms combined with each other to make, more complex characters. Now, there are over 50,000 of these. Let's make that flash with my little page turning pedal here. Yeah, over 50,000 characters in all. Think about that. That's pretty crazy. Now, only 20,000 of them are in regular use. And they say that you need 2,000. If you know 2,000 to 3,000, then you can start to read a newspaper. Now, I've got these little cool simplified translations of Journey to the West, which is where we get our Monkey King character, who I think is the prototype of the modern day superhero. It's a pretty cool story, but it's a pretty long story in the original, but they've made these versions where the first book only has 600 characters, and then the next ones they start adding like 300 characters at a time. I'm up to book 13 out of 31, and I think I'm up to a vocabulary list of 1,500. So I'm halfway to learning how to read a Chinese newspaper, which is pretty cool. But like I said, I didn't even study. Well, maybe as I might have said in the first take before I realized I wasn't streaming. Thank you, Mom, for giving me the heads up that I was talking to myself down here. But as I had said before, and I'll say here again, I didn't really even study the characters at all for the first 3-5 years that I was studying Mandarin. I just used the pinyin. And the pinyin, it's the system of English, using English letters, romanticized phonetic alphabet to teach Westerners and other non-Chinese speakers how to pronounce the characters. Because you grow up in China, you see a character, you just got to know that's ch, that's sh, that's xiang, and, they don't spell anything out that is pronounced. So you just got to know. But of course, we don't grow up there. We who do not grow up there need a little bit extra help. So yeah, they created several different phonetic systems over the years, and the one currently used more often than not is called pinyin. And the pronunciation is not too bad. I think it was easier than learning French, for instance, and way easier than say if you were going to learn English as a non-native English speaker. There are a few sounds that are a little bit different. There's a vowel that actually is like that French that you have to get used to if you're learning French. They do have that in Chinese too. And the R, the thing that's represented by an R, is kind of, I think that was the trickiest one. We'll get to that here in a second. Yeah, some of the pinyin is and some that's not so much. Oh, yeah, R is the hardest. You got to put your tongue back, like maybe the top of the roof of your mouth, kind of halfway back, and kind of say R and L at the same time. It looks like the word for person looks like ren, R-E-N, but you'd have to say ren, ren. You just got to listen to it a lot and practice it. So I think that's the hardest one. Um, there's some sounds we think of as one sound, like say for instance J. There's going to be almost 3 different ways of saying some of these. One more forward, like one more in the middle, and one more on the back, like on your molars. So yeah, the J, if it says J, it's like z up at the top, front of your teeth, and then if it says ZH, it's kind of like dr. It's like what we would write as a J, but more like back on your molars. Okay, and the same thing happens with the CH sound. We see CH and we go ch, and they write that CH, or the Pinyin has CH for that sound. But if it says Q, this is one of the weird ones, because we see Q and we think, but they use a Q, Pinyin uses a Q to mean kind of the CH sound moved way up to the front of your teeth. So CH, ch, Q, ch. That's another one to get used to. And yeah, the same thing with SH and X. SH we think of as sh, which is the way that SH is supposed to be read. But then to have that one pulled up front to the front of the teeth, they write X. So si, like XIE. That's she. That's how you say thank you. She. It's not she. That would be with SHIE. It's she. It's like you're doing an S, but just up at the front of your teeth. Okay, what else? Oh yeah, so vowels. Did I? Oh, I did. I had a double tap there. The vowels aren't terribly difficult. Sometimes the vowels do kind of sound a little different. The same Pinyin letter will sound a little bit different depending on the context of everything, all the other letters around them. But again, you just what did I say there? Yeah, you just kind of listen. You just listen and imitate, if you're a singer, musician, you got an extra edge there because it's just always easier to imitate an accent if you are used to kind of imitating sounds with your voices, especially when it comes to the tones. We're going to talk about the tones here. It's kind of what makes Mandarin sort of a melody. We always have melody in our voice, which anybody know the reference of sometimes behaves so strangely. Listen to Radiolab's famous episode called Musical Language. Search it right now. Radiolab, Musical Language. It actually gets into Mandarin a bit towards the later part of the episode, but mainly this episode is about just the music, the melody that's inherent in our language. If I didn't have any melody in my language, I would sound like the Will Ferrell character on Saturday Night Live, voice and modulation man. We always use, that's pitch right there. We use it to express emotion and character, but Mandarin actually uses it to differentiate actual words from one another. Okay, we're going to get to that later on. Okay, grammar. Compared to English grammar, compared to Japanese grammar, compared to Romance languages, it's pretty relatively easy. There are some mixing up of word orders, like we'll put adverbs in front of the verbs instead of after them, but nothing like, the mixed up syntax to the English speakers, that is, of like Japanese, where things are just, at least when I dabbled with Japanese, it seemed to me like that was the one language that seemed to just mix things up in completely different order, like that I was used to. The verbs always come at the end, and it was wacky. Mandarin, there's a little bit of that, but it's kind of a little more loosey-goosey. There's ways that are going to sound more fluent, but they don't have quite as hard, fast rules about that as other languages. Now, by the way, if anybody out there is a native Mandarin speaker or has studied this way longer than I have, please feel free to give me any insights or any corrections, especially because I'm just an armchair Mandarin enthusiast and a language freak by nature. So Most of this has been self-taught. I have had some help with my dear Chinese friends like Brian and Minnie and Ding Yuan and Q and Jade and Yang Yang, and thank you everybody out there. Lami, just I have such wonderful Chinese friends that are been really kind of leading me along, holding my hand through this, and I am really grateful to them, but I still have so much to learn. So if you hear anything that you know is just flat out wrong, let me know. But that being said, I do feel like Chinese grammar is not what's hard about Chinese. Yeah, like anybody who has studied Russian or German or any of the Romance languages, Italian, French, you're going to be psyched about learning Mandarin for at least one reason, and that reason being there are no endings. You get one word for a verb and one word for a noun, and that's it. You don't have these big books of tables with all the different tenses and all the different numbers and persons, and that you know well what I'm talking about if you've studied Spanish, for instance, in college. You know, there's a whole giant book just for verbs and all their endings. Yeah, you get one word for a noun and one word for a verb. No cases, no tenses. I jumped for joy when I realized that right off the bat. I'm like, yes! Okay, and then there's the tones, though. That's what people think is what makes Mandarin hard. Can you see both quotey fingers in there? Yeah, okay. Again, if you're a musician and you're used to hearing high notes and low notes, it's not as hard as you think. There's 5 different tones, basically. There's the first tone, which we think of as the high tone, and it is all kind of relative from person to person because we all have different vocal ranges. But the thing that distinguishes the high tone isn't just that it's up here, it's that it doesn't inflect, it doesn't change. There was a woman who had a YouTube channel, or has a YouTube channel, called 5 Minute Chinese, and she was really cute. She's like describing the first tone as what you don't want to hear at the hospital. You know, that steady, unchanging sound. That's high tone. Okay? Then the second tone is the one that's rising. It sounds like a question. So, like, let's say ma. Ma. M-A. That's first tone. Ma. And then the second tone would be ma. And then the third tone, I call it the dipper tone. It kind of goes down lower than any of them, but it bounces back. Ma. Ma. And then the fourth tone is the one that drops in pitch. It's like no. Ma. Ma. And then there is a fifth tone that's just an unstressed one that doesn't have any tone marking on it. I'm going to step back a little bit so I can be more in the frame here. It's the cool thing about having the pedals. You can move it with you. You don't have to reach the keyboard to turn pages. Again, yay. Okay, so like I was saying, your musical ears give you a huge advantage. I wrote this lecture for my music students that were interested in Mandarin, which is kind of why it has a musical scope to it. But hope it's still interesting to all of you that aren't necessarily musicians. If you just listen to the melody and start listening to the melody in just normal people's people's English language. English language. Did you hear how I said that? My pitch came down. That actually is a part of the word itself in Mandarin, along with the consonant and the vowel. The tone is what also gives meaning to the actual sound of the word. So if you sing it back, if you just kind of, even before you know what you're saying, if you just get used to just kind of imitating it back to people, they're going to be impressed. They're going to be like, oh, you know your tones pretty well. It's pretty cool. Now the first tone, we're going to use the word, like the same character, ma. That is sort of the classic introductory syllable to teach the tones. So that one is, and notice they're going to all have a different character to it. So this character is, if you know it, you know that that's M-A and the high tone, ma, and that means mom. But if you, let's see, oh yeah, that's just my little note about 5 Minute Chinese saying Ma. You don't want it to sound like the hospital heart monitor. Ma. And if you had a lower voice, ma, a guy, that's what's going to convey that it's first tone, the fact that it's steady and it doesn't change. Now, the second tone, that's ma in the second tone, the one that goes up. Ma. And guess what that means? See those little things? Remember how they look like that little grain symbol? Now there's two of them squished together. And then that one above it, I think, stands for, I think that means roof. I have to look at that one again. But anyways, sometimes the combination of the radicals is a little obscure. In fact, most of the time these days, you kind of have to look back into history to see why these ones kind of like squeeze together to mean this or that. But that's the one. That's the little picture, the little pictograph, the little character that was associated with the word ma. Same syllable, or same consonant, same vowel, but different tone. Ma, and that means hemp. And yeah, like you're asking a question. Ma, that's how you sound a second tone. Now the third tone, the dipper tone, as it were, ma, that's how you'd spell that one. And that means horse. Yeah, so I just aim down to the bottom of my vocal range and let it bounce up. Ma, ma. And yeah, it's really important. I tell the kids, be careful with your tones, or you might end up meeting your friend's mom and accidentally say, oh, I've always wanted to meet my best friend's horse. Awkward. Okay, fourth tone. That one is ma. And that just means, that means curse or scold, or I don't use that one so much. Like you actually say it like you would scold a kid. Ma, ma. That's the fourth tone. Okay, the neutral tone, actually, that's just ma. And you use that one, actually, in an interesting grammatical way. That you see a lot, because you put that at the end of a sentence. It doesn't have, like, a translation as such. It's so we call it a particle. It's a particle that you put at the end of the sentence to turn your sentence into a question. Ma. Like, I'm not going to try to find an example right now, but just when you see that one, just know that it's like a question mark. Okay, and it's unstressed, and as I was saying, the pitch, as well as the vowels of an unstressed neutral tone, can kind of vary just depending on the context of the other words and syllables around it. Okay, there are a couple of weird tone rules that you got to learn right at the beginning. There's not so many of them. One is that there's two very common words, the word for one, yi, and the word for no, which is bu. Well, they're different depending on if they're by themselves. Yi, number one, yi, first tone. But normally when you use the number one, like you're counting stuff, you use yi. It sounds like it's that sharply descending fourth tone. Yi. But, oops, went too far there. If it's followed by another word that has the fourth tone, instead of like, let's see, what's another second tone word? Defong. Like defong, that means place. So I wouldn't go yi defong. I'd go yi defong, like one place. Yi defong. The yi, which normally goes yi down, has to turn up, and it's just because of the way our mouths work, I think, and our voice works. It was just sometimes these things would be kind of cumbersome. So since it was happening all the time because yi was such a common thing, I think it just ended up being morphing to second tone whenever it was followed by a fourth tone. I'm curious to know how that happened. But the same thing works with bu, which is a fourth tone by itself. Bu, bu, bu. But if it's followed by a fourth tone, it goes up. Like yao means to want. And so a lot of times you say bu yao means don't. And you wouldn't go bu yao. You go bu yao. You got the boo, which is normally the fourth one coming down. You got to change it to a second one going up. Booyah. Okay, and then there's only really one more. Oh, here, let's see what's... Oh, yeah, what did I use, for example? Oh, I used boo shi. So shi, that's another really, really common one that you learned right away. Shi is basically their be verb, means is. So if you say isn't, you don't go boo shi. You go boo shi. You got to switch the boo going up instead of down. 不是. And you can see the little... Oh, notice how the adverb comes first. It's literally... We would say is not being the adverb following the verb, but they say not is. 不是, putting the adverb before. Okay, and the other weird tone rule is, well, those are the only two that have their own little special morphizations. I'm making up a word called morphization. Alterations. Let's go with that. They're the only two like that. There is a general tone rule, though, by the way, that is whenever two dippers, two third tones happen in succession, like ni hao. That's how you say hello. Ni means you, hao means good, but you don't, and they're both third tones, but you don't pronounce them both as third tones. If there's two third tones in a row, the first one actually goes up to a rising second tone, and it's just something that naturally happens as you get into the flow of speaking this. It's not something that Chinese people are thinking about when they're doing. It's just natural, and then just kind of gets encoded into what we think of as, I don't know if that's considered grammar when you talk about pronunciation rules like that per se, but it's something that has to be taught to foreigners, but is just something you grow up with if you're a native. So, for instance, I think ni hao is the classic example I use. Ni by itself, you is a third tone. Hao is good by itself, hao. But when they come in right together like that, you have to go ni hao. You don't write the tone symbol like that. Maybe if you're like really explaining it to a beginner, you would. But in pinyin, they wouldn't change that tone marking from third to second. They'd write both tone markings with that little upside down caret to mean third tones, and you just have to know that if there's third tones in succession, you just got to switch those third tones to rising like a second tone before the last one that remains third tone. So it's not, again, that's ni hao, ni hao. Okay, but like I said, it's not really as hard as you think, especially if you have musical ears. This is the final part of the episode here, and what I think is the hardest part for learning Mandarin, at least for me, and that is dun 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 homophones. Dun dun dun. Do these flash too? Nope. I gotta remind myself which of these special words I have blinking when I change the page. Anyways, homophones, same sound. They have the same syllables, same consonant, same vowel, and the same tone, but they have a different meaning. There are so many of these. Let's see. Yeah, zai. I don't know if I mentioned this in the slideshow coming up, but I think I was told that Mandarin has only 100 different syllables compared to like English. We've got like 1,000 or so. So obviously those 100 syllables is such a more economic, conservative amount of them. Well, yeah, we do get some more diversity out of those by assigning different tones to those same syllables. But even then, the same sound will have the same, with the same consonant, same vowel, and same tone will have a different meaning. So the example I'm using here is zai, Z-A-I, with the second tone going down. No, that's the fourth tone, sorry. Zai, zai, zai. So this can mean zai. It's another be verb. It's more like the location verb. Kind of like the difference between ser and a star, if you've studied Spanish. Shi would be the ser, and zai would be the star, generally speaking. So zai, that's a really common one. You're going to use that, like zaijian. It means, well, I'm wrong. That's not the character we would use for zaijian. We would say it the same way, but that's the character that we'd use for zaijian, because it literally means again see, like see you later, see you again. Zaijian. Notice both those, that place be verb, that locational be verb, zai, is pronounced the exact same way, but it has a different character. That second character, zai, you say it the exact same way, it means again. And then you've got Zai, which is, obviously a more complex character. It means to load. I think that's the one that they use for like uploading and downloading on computers. I'm not sure about that. But anyways, yeah, that's the tricky thing is it's not that this doesn't happen in English. Like we the word slay, like one horse open sleigh and slay the dragon, it's which is which just because of the context. In the same way with like, oh, we won one game. That doesn't sound weird when you're used to it in English. How many games did you win? Oh, we won one. But if you take a step back, that sounds kind of funny. We won one. If you weren't an English speaker and you heard that, you wouldn't know that those were two different words. So we do have them, but not like not like Mandarin. Okay, yeah, here's my little note about English has 1,000 different syllables and Mandarin only 100. And though these syllables are distinguished by the different tones, there are still so many characters that have the same syllable and tone. And that I asked Minnie once, how do you guys know? And she's just kind of shrugged and said, we just get it in the flow. And yeah, I get that. Just you grow up with it and you get it. All right. Still, you'll see Chinese people talking to themselves sometimes, and they'll, one person will be tracing out the syllable or tracing out the character on their hand just to clarify. That even happens amongst native speakers because there is so much room for confusion. You can imagine the legacy of puns in China is so profound. I mean, we love puns because there's a lot of them in English, just because we've taken little pieces of language from all over the place and combined them, absorbed them into English. So we have a lot of puns, especially through that dynamic. But just with this homophonic dynamic in Chinese, it's a long-standing tradition to make very clever and subtle and humorous plays on these words. Yeah, so in the 20th century, as China and the West were interacting more, of course, language was one of the things that was an obstacle to that, and especially the writing system, the fact that there was no no pronunciation system, at least as far as the written language goes. There was some talk about actually switching the country over to a phonetic alphabet. It didn't start with Mao. Mao was the one that was going to... So they were talking about that before. Mao kind of had a lot of different people working on possibilities. Well, some other things came along that demanded his attention that weren't terribly fun. And they just settled on simplifying the traditional characters into the simplified characters. You'll still see traditional characters in Taiwan and in Hong Kong, but the mainland pretty much just uses the simplified system that they've had since the 50s. And it's just like you'll see the same word in Taiwan or in Hong Kong, and it'll have like 22 different strokes, and then the simplified system whittles it down to like maybe 11 or something. But anyways, they never made the full-on switch, the full-on transition to writing everything officially as in one phonetic form or another. And there was a guy who I think is kind of like our Lewis Carroll, Zhao Yuanren. He was a guy that wrote dictionaries, etymologies, just really, really loved language and loved playing with language. I need to know more about this guy because he was obviously a character. He totally laughed, rolled his eyes at this whole idea of switching written Chinese over to a phonetic system officially. And just to prove his point, he wrote this famous poem we call it the Shi poem, and you can look it up online and hear somebody reading it with a translation. And he just did it to prove a point, being like, if you had to write this poem phonetically, how in the world would you know what they were talking about? So basically, I'm going to pronounce this. I'm going to read this to you. I've got the characters up on top, the Hansa, as it were, and then I've got the pinyin below, and then I've got the literal translation below that, and then I have the translation, like the fluent translation at the very bottom. And you'll see how it wasn't going to work. They just have to stick with their characters. So this is sure. I gotta look up here and squint my eyes here to see those tones. Sure. That's the story of Shi eating the lions. Okay. Sure. A poet named Shi lived in a stone room. Sure. A lion addict. He swore that he would eat 10 lions. Sure. He constantly went to the market to look for lions. Sure. At 10 o'clock, 10 lions came to the market. Sure. Looking at the 10 lions, he relied on his trusty arrow. Sure. To cause the 10 lions to die. Sure. The stone room was damp. Sure ordered a servant to wipe the stone room. Sure. After the stone den was wiped, Sure began to try to eat the meat of the 10 lions. Sure. At the time of the meal, he began to realize that the 10 lion corpses, sure, were in fact 10 stone lion corpses. Yeah, you can see if I got that right. 10 stone lion corpses. Sure. Try to explain this matter. So, yeah, there it is. That's the Sure poem. I think it's 98 characters, all with some tone of the word Sure, S-H-I. And, you know, I asked my friends, like, so if you heard somebody saying that and you didn't ever hear it before, would you have any idea what they were saying? And they just laughed and shook their head. They're like, no. So, yeah, it just goes to show. That is the hardest part about learning Mandarin to me, is all the homophones. Yeah, I remember I was in Chengdu, and we were at this park that was kind of like a theme park, not with rides and stuff, but just like a little, imagine a country fair. No, it's not crazy like that, but just imagine like a market with statues and just, I don't know how to describe it. It was just a theme park dedicated to the Three Kingdoms, which is another one of China's 4 classic all-time novels. There's The Monkey King, The Journey to the West, there's The Three Kingdoms, there's The Water Margin, and then there's Dream of the Red Chamber. Yeah, we landed in Chengdu because we were going to go see the pandas, because that's what Chengdu is famous for. But it turns out, like, oh my gosh, this is where all those people from the Three Kingdoms are from. And there's a whole park for it. And I was walking along and just heard these 2 girls nearby just talking to themselves and laughing, and one of them starts going sure, haha, and they're laughing because it's just kind of like a running joke. Yeah, that was a random memory that I hadn't thought about in some time. But yeah, thanks everybody. That is the end of this little intro to Mandarin lecture. And again, if you found anything that was just way off, please let me know. I'm still learning. I have so much more to learn, but it is so much fun. And again, that opening screen that said China Movie Night, that's something I want to get going here. I have watched at least 100 different Chinese movies over the last 8 or 9 years, and they're just mind-blowing. It is some of the best acting, some of the best writing, and it's just, people don't know what they're missing. So I always think that no matter what language or culture you're trying to catch yourself up to speed on. I think movies, of course music too, but especially movies are just such a wonderful, vibrant way to just immerse yourself if you're not able to actually physically immerse yourself into it. So I have a list of first movies that I'm going to be sharing with people, and maybe we can start a little online club, and as summer comes around, maybe we'll have a little in-person club in the meadow behind the studio here. But yeah, right now I'm going to start focusing on bringing some music camp materials up to speed now that I've got the technical stuff down here all mostly ironed out. Knock on music stand. So yeah, let me know what you think, everybody. Thanks for bearing with me. Like I said, I haven't really looked at this slideshow for quite a while. And this is mostly just to try out my fancy new page turning pedal. Isn't that cool? Hands free. Do 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 do. All right. Take care. I'll be live streaming again soon, so have fun out there.